Welcome to the Recruiter Certification Program. My name is Steve Lois, and I'll be guiding you through the next 8 to 10 hours of the program. The idea behind the certification for a recruiter, whether you're a new recruiter who's just joining our profession or you're a recruiter who's been doing this for 20 years, there's some basic core principles that each of us need to have and employ in order to be effective recruiters for both our organizations as well as our relationship with our potential candidates. We'll spend the next day or the next 8 to 10 hours, depending on how you're doing the modules, and really looking at the 7 basic steps of the recruiting function. And then depending on if you choose to move on to the advanced certification, we'll drill in depth in a number of those areas, sourcing being one of those, metrics being another one of those, and a fair amount in onboarding and behavioral-based interviewing. So let's set the stage for what our program is going to consist of today. And there's really a number of things that we want to make sure we cover to lay the foundation before we get into the actual steps of recruiting and how to actually do what it is that we do. So we have a number of objectives that we want to make sure that we cover. The first of which is we really want to understand what affects the recruiting landscape. What happens outside of our worlds as recruiters that ultimately affects what it is we do as recruiters, how we do what we do, when we do what we do. The second thing we'll look at is how do candidates think? And what's the psychology of candidates in terms of when a recruiter reaches out to them, whether it be LinkedIn, whether it be on the phone, when a candidate decides to ultimately leave an organization. What are the influencing factors for them that as recruiters we need to understand so we have the right approach when reaching out to them? In essence, as I mentioned, there's 7 steps to the recruiting process. Everything else you do will fall neatly under one of these steps. But we've broken it up into modules that seem to make better sense in taking you through the entire process. The first step is really the brand. We'll take a look at what do we mean by the brand, both internal brand and external brand, when we look at recruiting and the recruiting life cycle. The second piece, we'll look at the job, understanding the right way and the wrong way to take a job in order to understand what is it that our hiring managers are really looking for. The reality of it is many of our managers really don't know how to explain what they're looking for, and we'll talk about some of the inherent biases that they have and how to get over those and how to ask the right questions. Once we understand what we're looking for in terms of the job, and then we'll look at and spend some time in the hunt. Where do we go to find the people we want to engage with that ultimately could meet the qualifications that we've identified under the job? In the advanced certification program, we'll look at some of the advanced tools that are out there. In the initial recruiter certification program, we'll look at how do you create a strategy for employing some of those other tools as opposed to the basics of those actual tools. Once we have the names, we've identified the individuals that we want to reach out to, we'll spend a lot of time on the sell. This is engaging with a potential candidate. This is uncovering the needs of the potential candidate. This is one of the most important steps in the recruiting life cycle. It's something that I think has been lost over the years in this art of selling. We'll spend more time on that when we get to the actual sell. So once we've engaged a candidate, we've presented them with a compelling opportunity, and the client, your hiring manager, has decided, yes, this is the right individual, we'll then spend some time on the deal. There's a right way and a wrong way to present an offer. And even the wrong way ultimately could lead to some acceptances, but if we can increase our odds of success, and we can deal with things like counteroffers, we can deal with things like buyer's remorse and so forth, that goes from the deal and goes all the way into the quit, which is step number 6. And then step number 7, and the final step that we'll go over under the recruiting certification program, is the start, the onboard. You've now promised it, you've got to make sure that you and your organization actually deliver. So the 7 steps, again, in reflection are the brand, the job, the hunt, the sell, the deal, the quit, and the start. Mastering those 7 will help you become an effective recruiter.